sports desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Matisse says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Sunday, February 8th, 2026. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 530 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to the Jardy basement. We're quite a few hours removed from Ohio State's game earlier today, but on top of this being the Super Bowl and just kind of having a different workflow this evening, had to hurry up and get home. Had a little family urgent care situation. Everything's fine going forward, but had to get some x-rays in the Jardy house tonight. So did not podcast from the Schottenstein Center. Came home and took care of some stuff. And I'm sitting here now looking at a box score. Final score earlier today. Number 2, Michigan, 82. Ohio State, 61. After Ohio State had played Michigan to a 50-50 draw for the first roughly 32 minutes 16 days ago up at the Chrysler Center, Ohio State was never in this game. This was a one-sided affair, the most lopsided game of the season, the biggest scoring margin of the season for Ohio State in a loss. This felt the least competitive, even more so, I would say, than the Wisconsin game, because even though the Buckeyes couldn't get stops of any nature really in that game, obviously giving up 92 points, they still scored 82. And you kind of thought like, well, maybe Wisconsin will throw the ball away like 4 or 5 times in a row, and Ohio State will hit a couple shots and be back in. Like that game was sort of academic for a while, but this one felt clinical for Michigan. The Wolverines led for 39 minutes and 13 seconds. Biggest lead was 23, and it was just a steady arm's length, keeping Ohio State from ever really getting comfortable or doing much of anything, and frankly just using superior size, skill, athleticism, talent, all those things, rolling them up and putting it out there on the floor and taking care of Ohio State by 21 points here to improve for the Wolverines to 22-1 on the season, 12-1 in the Big Ten. Ohio State drops to 15-8 overall, 7-6 in the Big Ten. And this is certainly the latest high-profile defeat for Ohio State as the Buckeyes continue to search for highly rated wins, quad one opportunity wins. This was every bit the definition of that. And I honestly came into this thinking it was going to be a much closer game, given that playing at Michigan 16 days prior, it was a game until Michigan pulled away in the last 7 minutes. There are a couple of things in this game that really jumped out that we'll get into in a moment, a couple of moments from the game that I want to go over. Honestly, this was like, I stopped my play-by-play, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes left in the game, because it just felt like there was no point in the play-by-play anymore. It was over, and it had been over for a little while. And so it's kind of there's less, I feel like, in the gameplay to really dive into than just like the feeling that this game, I think, left on the fan base. So we're going to try to dip our toes into both waters here. Running down the box score, Bruce Thornton had 16 for Ohio State on 6 of 16 shooting. He also tied for the team lead with 6 rebounds. So he had 6. Devin Royal had 6, and Tayson Chapman had 6 rebounds. He had 8 points off the bench. Jake Diebler went with an extremely tight rotation in this game. Like, Colin White didn't play. Only 8 Buckeyes saw playing time. Gabe Cupps only played for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And as I look at this now, that is a 4 trillion. He did not record a single statistic in that time. I thought for sure he got called for a foul, but he's not listed for one here on the box score. But Tayson Chapman played 18 minutes and 58 seconds off the bench, and Ivan Yagovin played 9 minutes and 41 seconds off the bench. He did play with Tilly for a few minutes. He had 3 points and 2 boards. But what's really jarring when you look at Ohio State's box score is certainly behind Bruce Thornton with 16. So Devin Royal had 15 points. of those 15 points, a lot of them came late. So Devin Royal finished with 15 points, but 9 of them came in the final 4 minutes and 4 seconds. And at that point, Michigan was ahead 72-52. Never seemed to get going in this game until it was too late. 3-point shooting continues to dip. He was 0 of 3 in this game, which continues now a stretch for Devin where you start counting backward. So he was 0 of 3 in this game, did not take one against Maryland. He was 0 of 5 at Wisconsin, 1 of 3 against Penn State, 0 of 4 in the previous game against Michigan, and then 1 of 5 in the home overtime win against Minnesota. So that's a tough stretch right there. I mean, that means in his last 6 games, Devin Royal is 2 for 20 from 3. So that would be 10%. That drops him on the season to 31.5%. And he's 23 of 73. Michigan is not a good matchup for him this season. As we look at this, he had 4 in the loss in Ann Arbor, and then he had 15 in this one. But again, most of those points came late for Devin. But then saying that, the other thing that really jumps out is part of what made Ohio State so successful in the first game against Michigan was John Mobley Jr. He had 22 in that first game and really gave the Wolverines fits. And it was clear that Michigan planned to take him out of this game to make life difficult for him. And the Wolverines succeeded. Junie played 32 minutes and 55 seconds, and he was 1 of 9 from the floor. He was 0 of 3 from 3. First time this season he's not connected on a 3-pointer. And so 1 of 9 overall, 0 of 3 from 3. That means he was 1 of 6 from 2-point range and frequently ended up driving the ball into spots where he could do little with it other than have a shot blocked, have a shot altered, or turn it over. This felt to me like the Washington game for Mobley, and another sign that he's, on the whole, has made progress on the season. I think that much is clear, but he still has games like this where he ends up, the game plan did not call for him to drive into the paint and try to score against Michigan's height, or certainly not to do it in the manner that it was being attempted in this game because, it didn't work. And it was significant when you look at how does Ohio State only end up with 61 points, and it's not just on John Mobley, but he finishes with 4. Now, the other guy Amari Bynum had 5 points, played 32 minutes, 59 seconds. He only took 4 shots, finished with 5 points. And then Christoph Tilley finished with 10, but he had Ohio State's first 8 points. He was 3 of 3 to start the game. He only took 5 shots the rest of the way. He hit 2 threes early, only attempted 1 more the rest of the game, and finished with 10. So that's the Ohio State side of things. Then you flip it over and you look, Michigan took 72 shots. Ohio State took 55. So the Buckeyes, at least for a while, Ohio State was out shooting Michigan. The Wolverines ended up shooting 45.8% from the floor, and Michigan only took 7 free throws in this game. Ohio State took 16, but it didn't matter. I mean, Ohio State shot 36.4% from the field, 20 of 55. Michigan was 33 of 72. The Wolverines had a 44-31 rebounding advantage. Yaxel Lendenborg had 14 and 14. Morez Johnson Jr. had 11 and 12. This was the second time in 3 games against Ohio State that Morez Johnson had double-digit rebounds in the first half. He did it last year when he was playing for Illinois in the game that Ohio State played at Illinois, and then he did it in this game. He had 10 rebounds at halftime, including 4 on 1 possession. So not just that he had 12 rebounds, he had 6 offensive and 6 defensive rebounds. Michigan finished with 17 offensive boards, and Ohio State had 31 total rebounds. So Michigan with 17 offensive rebounds, Ohio State with 22 defensive rebounds. And in the first half, when Michigan was building a 10-point lead, Michigan had 12 offensive rebounds and Ohio State had 13 defensive rebounds. The Buckeyes did not rebound nearly to the level that they needed to win this game. Some of that is certainly Michigan doing Michigan things. And then some of that is that they were not physical enough. This was a team that they rebounded decently well against the last time and hung with until the final couple of minutes. And then this was not that. And so It's kind of interesting. I mean, Michigan only ended up with a 14-9 advantage in second chance points, despite having 17 offensive rebounds, which is kind of a weird stat. Michigan did outscore Ohio State in the paint 42-20, 10-0 in fast break points. The other thing that Ohio State did well in that first matchup was force turnovers. And Michigan is a team that has been known this season to turn it over, occasionally at a high rate. Not so in this game. Michigan only had 8 turnovers. I think only 2 in the first half. And then this game was just kind of over. There was never really a great moment where you thought that Ohio State was going to find a way to dig back into it. And that meant that the largest crowd of the season, 17,684 announced attendance in this game. They leave having seen the biggest loss of the season. Interestingly enough, it's only Michigan's 12th biggest win of the season, so about middle of the pack for the Wolverines, but this was the worst loss of the season for Ohio State, which I think tells you a little bit about the respective seasons that these two programs are putting together. So that's the box score. We're going to move on now to a couple more of my thoughts, as well as a few moments in the game that really stood out to me. But before we do that, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man, Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. And shouts to the one fan that I didn't get a chance to stop and say hi. I was making a quick run to get a little more Coke Zero and use the restroom during a timeout. And as I was going up the steps at the shot, I had someone yell, they saw me and they said, "Adam, we love the podcast," or something to that effect. And that stuff will never not floor me. It was very out of the blue, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you for that. Sorry I didn't get your name, but I appreciated that. It was a much appreciated bright spot on a bit of a difficult day. So thanks for the kindness. All right, so I think my biggest takeaway out of this, we're going to talk around this in a couple different ways, but I think it makes sense to just kind of hit it head on to start, is the fact that this was in some ways the first real glimpse I feel like a lot of people have had of Ohio State this season. This was the largest crowd of the season. This was a game and a setting that Ohio State has been lobbying for. Jake Diebler has been pounding the table asking for home Big Ten weekend home Big Ten weekend games. I think I said that right. And both Diebler and Dusty May have vocally and privately lobbied for the Big Ten to protect Ohio State and Michigan as a rivalry, that they should play each other twice every season. So all that comes to fruition, and the end result is the least competitive, most lopsided loss of the season. That's rough. That is, there's a lot of people that will form their opinions of this Ohio State basketball team, the season, potentially all the big picture stuff that they want to extrapolate it to, and look at this game and draw conclusions from it. And there is some fairness to that, because Ohio State, I don't know if these teams play 10 times. I don't know how many times Michigan wins, if it's 8, if it's 9. But it was my colleague Rob Aller was there, and I will credit him because he was the one that said it at some point in the game. But he said one of these teams looks like a Final Four team, and one of these teams looks like a bubble team. And so he was spot on in that assessment of that's what it looked like out there. Michigan very well could be the best team in college basketball. Michigan looks every bit as athletic, dangerous, deep, balanced, hockey, but also connected, like all the things that like you look for in a team that just handles its business and advances in March. Like Michigan did all of those things in this game. And the result of that is amplified by the fact that Ohio State is not there. And frankly, almost nobody is. I mean, make your short list of national champion contenders, and Michigan is on that list. And so I think being upset about this particular defeat is one reaction, or is one thing, but I think that, how do I say this? It's not surprising that Ohio State has lost this game. They were double-digit underdogs and looked like it. Michigan is the better team. Michigan has more going for it right now. And you just have to look. It wasn't more than a week and a half ago that the Field of 68 put out they pulled 20 Big Ten coaches and voted on the best coaching job in the league. And Ohio State was 7th. Michigan was 1st. Like, the resources and things that Michigan has to pull from right now are significant. And the result of that, you see a team that this isn't a one-off for Michigan. Like, this is what Michigan is doing to everybody this season. They're just beating the snot out of teams. And so what is hard on the Ohio State side is that this is where Ohio State wants to be, but it is not there right now. And the longer that the Buckeyes go without not even just winning a game like this, but just like being in it, I think the more frustrating it seems to be getting for the fan base. And it feels like it's been a long walk through the wilderness. It's funny. I look back. This is my 11th season covering the team for the Dispatch, and I was talking with former coworker Todd Jones was at the game, and I was saying how I covered the last 2 years of Thad Matta's tenure, which were underwhelming, and then Chris Holtmann took over, and things were on an upward trajectory, and then COVID hit, and then Oral Roberts happened, and then things just steadily slid back the other way. And it just feels like Ohio State continues to be kind of like knocking on that door. And like this isn't the kind of like this loss won't keep Ohio State from making the NCAA tournament. But when you are watching a program as a fan and wanting that program to be living up to what it wants to, its self-professed ideals are, which are to compete for championships, to win at the highest level, all those things. Today felt like a reminder that the Buckeyes are not there. And there seems to, the gap between Ohio State and Michigan on this day was significant. After the game, Bruce Thornton talked about little things, and he talked about how the fact that Ohio State keeps like these things kind of keep happening. They had talked about they had to be physical, they had to rebound, they had to control that kind of stuff. And instead they gave up 12 first half offensive rebounds. And that just isn't like, that's not what they talked about. They talked about things like, hey, if they're going to force you to drive, you can't just think you're going to drive into the teeth of their defense and score over them. Like, Michigan is tall. They are big. Adai Mara had 24 points in this game on 16 shots. Like, this was a overall clunker dud of a game in front of the biggest crowd of the season that will now draw conclusions about the program based on this. And whether that's a tough spot to be in, because on the whole, Ohio State has been better than this, but this is the impression that is going to be left with a lot of people. And the only thing that changes it is winning. The only it's like that old saying, like, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Like, until Ohio State wins some games like this is the perception. This is what it feels like. This is what the fans are seeing. Bruce Thornton just talked about offensive rebounds and miscommunications. He said, we can't do those small things, can really build up, adds up quick. We don't take care of the small things, they can get out of control. I don't know what else Bruce can say, but we've heard that a lot. And it's just small things, it's little things. Like I said, this reminded me of, in some ways, what it felt like talking to the players after the Wisconsin loss, the Washington loss. The margins for this team just don't seem to be very significant. I do still think that, like, compared to last year, that the floor is higher than last year, but I'm wondering if the ceiling is much different, just based on the fact that this team continues to search for like a game where they put it all together, like they did against Maryland or against UCLA. I think that UCLA win is probably the most impressive one, even though it was a home win, and isn't necessarily the highest rated win as far as like their rankings go. But we just haven't seen this team consistent, like, hit on all cylinders against a team that it needs to punch up against. And so, first question of postgame, we talked to Adai Mara, and Yaxel Lendenborg. And I threw out the first question to both of them, and I just said, the last time you guys played, it was a game for until the last, 6-7 minutes when Michigan pulled away. What was different this time? Yaxel, pretty much the first thing he said, I would say our maturity coming into this game was enhanced. We felt like they're a good team, but they don't belong in the same conversation as us. Yaxel, by the way, has turned into the new Nigel Hayes. In the element of like, if he is on your team, I could see him absolutely being your favorite player. Like, he was out there pregame. Apparently, he's done this a lot this season. I just hadn't heard of it, but he was wearing a Roddy Gale jersey for warmups. Like, wore it backwards, so it said Gale Jr. across the chest. And he did say something at the end that like they wanted to win this game for Roddy Gale. Roddy was a non-factor in his return. 0 of 6 from the floor, 2 assists. He had he had 2 shots blocked. Played 17 minutes and 43 seconds. He was booed. Wasn't anything quite like the vitriol we saw last year. But Roddy's return to Columbus was uneventful. But like, you think back, like Yaxel, after Michigan won the first game, and he called out Mr. Colin White for his comments about how Ohio State was going up there for blood. They were out for blood, and he took note of that. He made a point to talk about that after the game. And I remember Nigel Hayes talking about how Wisconsin had more Ohio players on the court than Ohio State did. And he said something to the effect of like, they took the players they wanted. I did what I did, and and I'm winning championships. And then he went like, mic drop, and like knocked the mic over. I'll never forget that press conference at the Kohl Center. There's some Nigel Hayes in Yaxel, and he has earned the right to say those things. I mean, this is Ohio State's 2 biggest losses of the season, both of them to Michigan. And Yaxel didn't necessarily play great in the first one, and he wasn't the star necessarily in this game, but he caused so many problems for Ohio State. It's something that got brought up a couple of times in post-game interviews. Like, I'm trying to find this quote from Diebler. Dusty talked about him and how much of a mismatch issue he is for teams. He said, I asked, like, what's the difference? What was different when you prepared for Ohio State this time compared to last time? He said, Thornton's a running back. Royal and Mobley caused so much stress on your defense. He said, not many teams have a 6'9", 230-pound wing like Yax that can hold ground and make plays. That's a big part of our success against Ohio State is simply it's a good matchup for us with how we're built, and that's not always the case. So that was the next interesting post-game talking point, which is Dusty May just saying, like, flat out, like, we're not a good matchup for Ohio State. And there's a lot of truth to that. Like, there were quite a few times in this game, in both of these games, where I just thought for Ohio State to do what it needed to do, it had to execute 4 or 5 things in order to generate a high quality shot, whereas Michigan will only have to execute like 2 or 3. The size advantage was real. The things that Michigan was really good at really gave Ohio State fits, and the way the Buckeyes were able to handle that in the first game was causing turnovers, and some of them were self-inflicted by Michigan, and John Mobley Jr. with a hot shooting night. And neither of those things happened in this game. And instead, Michigan just dominated the offensive glass early and really kept Ohio State out of it from that point. Like, the tone had been set. Moments where I thought there was a chance. So it was 2-2, and then it was 9-8 when Christoph Tilley hit his second 3-pointer on 3 possessions. And then on the very next possession, Michigan got the ball to Elliot Cadeau. He threw a wide open lob to Adai Mara, who put it home. It was 11-8 at that point. Well, Ohio State never got within 1 point again. The Buckeyes would get to 2, but now here's where things really flip. So Ohio State was down 23-19 after Bruce Thornton found Amari Bynum for a dunk. That made it 21-19, and then Thornton fouled Lendenborg. He hit 2 free throws with 8:29 to go. So it's 23-19. Mobley drives, loses the ball, turnover. He wanted the coaches to challenge it. They didn't. Ohio State's down 4. And this starts a sequence where Cadeau just knifes through the defense, gets it to Lendenborg in the left corner. He hits a 3. Ohio State's down 7. Amari Bynum hits a 3 to pull Ohio State within 4. and Ohio State forces a miss. Namari Burnett with a miss, ball goes out of bounds. Devin Royal rebounds a Tilly 3-point miss and scores, so Ohio State's down 2, 26-24. And then Adai Mara hits the first 3-pointer of his season. Big man was wide open on the 3-point line. He hits the 3. It's a 5-point deficit for Ohio State. Tilly has a nice spin, but he misses a layup at the rim. Yaxel Lindenborg misses a 3-pointer. It was open. Thornton gets fouled on a drive, and then Christoph Tilly gets called for a moving screen, 5:22 to go. Michigan gets a 3-pointer from Namari Burnett. Ivan Ugovin hits 2 free throws. It's 32-26. LJ Kaysen hits a wide open 3-pointer. It's now 35-26 Michigan. Mobley scores on a drive, his only 2-point make of the game. And then Adai Mara hits another wide open 3-pointer. The dude who is 0 of 4 on this season goes 2 of 2 on this sequence to push Michigan's lead up to 38-28. Now, there were the teams would trade a couple of empty possessions here. Ivan Ugovin hit a free throw. And then Ohio State down 38-29. Let me make sure I get this right here. Okay. Ohio State down 38-29, and Michigan gets a 3-pointer from LJ Kaysen. Bruce Thornton answers with a 3-pointer to make it 41-32 with 41.9 seconds left. And then Yaxel Lindenborg misses a 3-pointer, but Morez Johnson outmuscles Ivan for the offensive rebound, scores while being fouled, hits the free throw, 16.5 seconds left. Now, Tayson Chapman would hit 2 free throws to send the game to the half with Ohio State down 10. But the last 7 times that Michigan scored in the first half, and this started with Ohio State within 23-19 with 8:29 to go. From that point on, every time Michigan scored on 7 more possessions the rest of the half, every single one of them was a 3-point possession. Michigan hit 6 threes in that stretch and a 3-point play. And the 3-point play was Morez Johnson grabbing his 10th rebound of the half and putting Michigan up 12. And it was just an absolutely back-breaking sequence where Ohio State hadn't necessarily played terribly, but they couldn't make shots at their end, and Michigan was just bombing 3-pointers. They didn't have an answer. Now, Michigan would cool down. The Wolverines were 9 of 18 from 3 in the first half, 1 of 6 in the second half. So they finished 10 of 24. That's 41.7%. But the damage was done. And then Ohio State down 10, and this leads me into one of the next things I want to talk about. So Ohio State's down 10. They get the ball. And this possession summed up what was to come. This is where I thought, they might not, they're not going to flip this. First possession of the game, Tilly ends up with the ball in the paint, and he passes up what would have been a pretty decent look and kicks out. Amari Bynum has a good look from 3. He passes that up. And then Thornton ends up with the ball, and Morez Johnson deflects it away from Bruce, off him, out of bounds. It gets reviewed. Initially, it was ruled Ohio State's ball. It gets turned over. Michigan gets the ball. Yaxel Lindenborg slams the ball home on the next possession. It's now a 12-point deficit. And that was something that you look at the final stats, and you have Bynum with 4 shots, Tilly with 8 shots after, again, starting 3 for 3. You had guys getting into position at times and then just not taking a shot. I know Amari Bynum hasn't shot the 3-pointer to maybe the degree that Ohio State would like him to, or, I think there's probably like another level there for him to still get to. He is 24.6%, 14 of 57. So he came in with a reputation as a shooter for a big. It hasn't quite panned out, at least on a consistent level. And I've had some readers point out some inconsistency with some mechanics and things like that. But when you have a kick out 3 after a paint touch, those are the threes Ohio State wants to be taking. And they passed up quite a few of those in this game. And I know that was a real source of frustration, because not only would they pass up if they got like a look like that, but it was frequently they would pass up a look like that as the defense was sagging off of them, and then they would drive into that sagging defense and throw the ball away or miss a contested shot instead of taking the wide open jumper that was there for them. That happened too many times in this game, and I felt like that was that's where you saw like the different levels of aggression, and you just saw Michigan consistently attacking and knowing that it could get what it wanted to, and Ohio State started playing tentative. And then the game starts to get out of hand pretty quickly. So after Lindenborg's slam dunk puts Ohio State down 12, Thornton ends up missing a shot, gets his own rebound, and then they get to Tilly, and Mara blocks his shot. Then Michigan turns it over, but then This is, you can see some of the frustration bubbling up here. Mobley trying to get open, can't get open. Two-hand shoves. Namari Burnett gets called for the foul, turnover, so Ohio State doesn't get a shot off. Adai Mara scores with a right-handed hook shot, so Ohio State's down 14 again. Devin Royal draws a foul, hits both free throws, 17:49 to go. It's within 12. And then Elliot Cadeau throws a lob for Mara. He scores. It's 14. Thornton hits a three. And then, again, this is where things start to go sideways, and the mental mistakes pick up because they start to not even get shots off. They force a Mara miss, and then Amari Bynum passes up a shot at the rim, or excuse me, at the three-point line, drives the basket, gets underneath the basket, gets in a bad spot, picks up his dribble, pivots, throws his elbows, knocks over Elliot Cadeau, gets called for a charge. So no shot, turnover, 16:23 to go. Morris Johnson scores at the other end. Ohio State's down 13. Devin Royal's going for an offensive rebound. He shoves Roddy Gale out of the way. Offensive foul, turnover. Actually, I'm not even sure there was a shot on that play. I just wrote Devin Royal shoves Roddy for offensive foul, turnover. Michigan comes down and gets a miss, but then Tilly has a shot blocked. Yaxel Lindenborg slams the ball home at the other end on the break. Ohio State calls timeout. They're down 15 with 15:07 to play. And just a sequence there where, like, you have fouls that aren't even with people who have or are on the ball. And it just added up to a nightmare, frankly, overall of a game for Ohio State. When you think about like how different things would look and feel if Ohio State had won this game, or even just if it had been closer. But it wasn't. This was, again, like we keep harping on the same point, but this was the largest defeat for Ohio State at the hands of Michigan since 1989. There's still plenty of still a lot of chances out there for Ohio State. The Buckeyes have 7 more Big Ten games, plus the game against Virginia. And you probably know the schedule by now. It's a brutal stretch where you go at Maryland on the 5th, home to Michigan on the 8th. USC comes to town on the 11th. So you're picking up a pattern here every 3 days. USC on the 11th, Virginia in Nashville on the 14th, home to Wisconsin on the 17th. And then the Buckeyes will get 5 days before they go to Michigan State and go to Iowa. So at this point, Ken Palm projects Ohio State as favorites against USC, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Indiana. So if Ohio State were to go 4-4 to close out the season, they would be 19-12, 11-9 in the Big Ten. And some of those wins would be against teams that are comparable. Like from a Ken Palm standpoint, Ohio State's biggest win is the UCLA win. Bruins are 39th at Ken Palm. At this moment, Ohio State's 42nd, USC's 48th, Wisconsin's 40th. So these are all teams that are just kind of like right there, clawing with each other to try to make some sort of climb in the Big Ten standings. But like Wisconsin beat Michigan. That's the one loss. Badgers have that kind of win in their pocket. They also beat Ohio State. So that the Buckeyes have to find a way, if they want to make their way into March, if they want to be playing in the NCAA tournament, they're going to have to find a way to win, let's say, USC, Virginia, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Iowa, Purdue, Indiana. Like, of those 7, like Ohio State's jockeying like with USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Indiana for position in like the middle of the Big Ten standings. Does Ohio State have to win 3 of those 4? Beating USC on Wednesday would be a start. USC is 18-6 on the season. The Bruins are the Bruins. Geez, it's late. Trojans are on a 3-game winning streak, having just won at Penn State, and then beating Rutgers and Indiana at home. A lot of comparables to Ohio State's schedule. So the next big game of the season comes here in 3 days, and Ohio State has another chance to try to string something together and find a way to put itself in position to make the tournament. But this certainly today, this was a dud, and this was a game that is going to stick with people until Ohio State gives them something else to fixate on. And as you look at the schedule here, Ohio State started out 6-0, and since then is math is hard. 9-8 since then, and has essentially alternated win-loss. A 2-game winning streak when they beat Grambling State and then won at Rutgers, and then 2-game winning streak when they beat UCLA and Minnesota at home. But otherwise, like, lost to Pitt, win at Northwestern, lost to Illinois, beat West Virginia, lost to North Carolina, and they won 2. And then you lose at home to Nebraska, win at Oregon, lose at Washington, beat UCLA, Minnesota, lose at Michigan, beat Penn State, lose at Wisconsin, win at Maryland, lose to Michigan. Just a step forward, a step back, still kind of right there, just not able yet to find a way to get over the hump. And so as we keep talking around it, see what the USC game looks like, and if that's maybe the springboard, or who knows. But for those of you that are frustrated after this game, and for those of you that are feeling it and are wondering what is going on and why can't this team win these games, I get it. This was not what I was expecting. I didn't necessarily think Ohio State would win, but I did think that a team that I just felt like having been right there with Michigan at Michigan, and now you get them at home, I thought this game would have been closer, and I was wrong. We're going to wrap it up here. So I'll be back with you Wednesday night after the USC game. But as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardydispatch.com. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty for getting this out to you all. I am assuming that it'll be him that will be publishing it because I forgot to reach out in advance. So fingers crossed. And if not, I apologize to whoever actually is editing this. Either way, I'll be back with you on Wednesday. So until we speak again, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.